Hi everyone, it's Liz here. Today we have got a really great topic. Now, as you know, last Wednesday I asked everybody what their fears, worries and concerns were around having a child with a learning difficulty at that very moment in time. And we got some amazing responses, and the email was sent out today with all the results. So I hope you've all seen that. But in that email, I got lots of questions. And one of the questions I got was this one. So let me read it to you. I'm just going to pull it up on my screen and read off the screen. So you'll see me reading. And this is from her name is Kerry Ann. And I'm sure most of you will be able to relate to this. So she says, "Hi, Liz. I have a 5-year-old daughter who has nearly finished grade prep in Victoria." And by that, I'm sure she means Victoria, Australia. "I see her struggling on a daily basis with her reading, but it's not just that. There is so many things that she struggles with. She has trouble remembering a word that she's learnt on the previous page. A normal child will take 2 to 3 times to learn something. My daughter will take 10 to 15 times. She has problems hearing properly and is unable to follow more than one instruction at a time. She still confuses certain letters and numbers, just to name a few things. She is sitting in that little grey area where she is just a little too smart for a specialist school and a little too slow for a normal school. So I thought putting her into the smaller local Catholic school would help. It did, but it didn't as well. And now that we are near the end of the year, I feel that she would greatly benefit from repeating her prep year. Her Noah's Ark worker also strongly agrees with me. However, her classroom teacher and school principal disagree and refuse to keep her down. She has multiple diagnosed medical conditions as well as a documented learning delay, which she misses multiple school days due to either attending appointments or suffering from her illness. The school has an individual learning plan for every single student. But how is a student supposed to understand what is being said in the classroom when she hasn't even grasped the basics yet? Trying to get a personal tutor for her where I live is nearly impossible. And seeing as I am a single parent with only her living at home, she tends to not want to listen to me when I try to help her with her schoolwork. According to her latest review, she is only now up to where her classmates were at the beginning of the school year. And for those of you who live in the Northern Hemisphere, that means she's just about to finish her first ever year at school, which is our prep year here. I am not really sure what I should do. Should I push forward and give the school an ultimatum to either hold her down, otherwise I'll move her to a different school, or should I let her go up to grade 1 and just keep trying to work with her at home and hopefully get her a personal tutor? That's my dilemma. Thank you for your time. Yours sincerely, Jenny Lee." So that's a really great question, and it's not unlike questions that I actually get quite often. Now, I actually cover this in one of the chapters in my book where I actually write, should my child, here it is, how to decide if your child should repeat a year or change schools. So Jenny Lee, here's some ideas for you. Okay, so the things that you need to look at in terms of your child. One are the chronological age of your child. So she's 5. So she seems to be quite young, average probably for prep, but a lot of boys start prep when they turn 6. So holding her back probably isn't going to affect in the long term her chronological age. In Victoria particularly, and in New South Wales particularly, we see more and more children starting school at the age of 6. So I don't think chronological age is an issue for you. The level of maturity of your child is another one. Some 5-year-olds are incredibly mature and some are incredibly immature. Some start school knowing all about what goes on in the world. Some start school and they can't even tie their shoelaces yet and have no idea about the world. So they really do mature at different rates. So that's something to consider. You need to look at her social skills and her friends' networks because they are really important in terms of how she feels about either staying down or moving up. Will she feel left behind? We don't want her to feel left behind. We want her to feel, by the time she gets to the end of prep year, if she was to do it again, that she is now king of the kids, she is now caught up, and she's now at the top of the class and not feeling like she's at the bottom of the class. And that's the thing. A lot of the time it's about a child's perception. We want them to always feel like they are doing well and that they are coping. It is a much nicer feeling to feel that you're at the top of the class rather than being at the bottom of the class. So something to consider when you have conversations with her. You need to consider the number of days she's missed. Now, you said she had quite a few illnesses and issues going on throughout her year. She's missed quite a few days. Now, this is a big issue, and it is definitely something that you can use in your argument if you feel as though she should be repeating her prep year, because when children have days away from school, sometimes it doesn't matter, but other times they'll lose their momentum and they get big gaps in their learning. So something to think about. Ask yourself, will the positive effects of staying down outweigh the negative effects? Okay, so think about the positive and the negative effects moving forward on her. Now, she's only in prep, so this is definitely probably one of the best times to hold a child back. The other time is when you're changing schools, or when you're going from primary school or elementary school to high school. That's another good time that you can hold a child back. So we're looking at the psychological impacts, because a child who is held back later in their school life can actually feel as though they can never catch up. They're always going to be struggling. They're always going to be the lowest child in their class. It's really, really important for your child to feel like they're at the top, as I've already mentioned. So you also need to ask yourself, and you need to ask this of the school, if my daughter does stay down, what are some of the benefits of her staying down? For example, would she have the same teacher so she gets consistency of teaching skills? Would she have a different teacher who perhaps is better and more capable at helping children with learning difficulties who struggle? So you've got to look at the pros and cons of what the school is going to offer you in terms of your child repeating or not repeating. Now, it's interesting because your school doesn't want your daughter to repeat. Many schools actually go to parents and say, we do want your child to repeat a year. And then the parent is left saying, well, hang on a minute, don't I get a say here? Now, at the end of the day, the parents do get a say. All right. If you choose a school and that school is a private school, in other words, you're paying for fees, you have actually purchased a product, and that product is your child's education. So you have every right as a parent to ask if your child can stay down if you feel it is deemed necessary. Now, if you don't feel qualified to suggest that, you already said you had a Noah's Ark Learning Centre person who suggested staying down would be a good option. You may find other people in your network of specialists who may recommend for or against staying down. It's well worth asking them to put in writing. As soon as you put something in writing to a school, they must respond accordingly, and generally that's in writing. So there is no harm in getting some recommendations from specialists within your network to ask them what they think, but definitely get it in writing. So I think, Jenny Lee, that based on what you say, it sounds like your daughter is a really good candidate for staying down. Now, when I taught prep, it was not unusual for me to suggest to parents that their children considered staying down. Often it was boys, but for no other reason than that was just my teaching experience. And I'm telling you, those boys went from the bottom of the class, and with one more year's maturity and one more year's learning under their belt and one more year's consistency, they literally went to the top of the class, and those children stayed at the top of the class from that time forward. So I would suggest that you really do dig your heels in a little bit if you feel really strongly about this and your daughter thinks it's a great idea too, because remember, your daughter's the one that has to go to school every day. And even at the age of 5, she's probably going to have a pretty good idea of where her preferences lie, depending on how she's feeling about herself. So times when it may be appropriate to repeat, let's give you some of those. And of course, this is from my book, Helping Children with Dyslexia. So when you are changing schools, when you are repeating to get your child at a more appropriate level. Some countries have different ages for starting school, and sometimes when you move country or you move state, it can actually change the age of your child depending on where they are then going to school in the future. So it may be appropriate to repeat a year to get them more age relevant to their peers in their classes, because let's face it, school is important, but social networks for children and the way they impact on their confidence are actually more important. If everything's going well for them socially, generally the academic sort of achievement follows because they feel confident in themselves that they can actually interact and operate within the right peer group and the right peer age for themselves. You might find that if your child repeats, they are eligible for certain educational services. That is definitely something to consider. Your child might have access to a better teacher with a better skill set if they repeat. Your child is actually saying to you, I want to repeat. You do need to listen to your children. So it's well worth, if your child starts saying to you, I need to repeat, that you have a conversation with them, ask them why. It's also important to understand that their motivations are the right motivations for wanting to repeat. So you definitely need to explore that in a conversation with them. Your child is changing schools. Or starting a new grade level and starting a new grade level at a new school, it's often a great time to take an opportunity to repeat if you think that your child might need it. I've already talked about moving interstate and intercountry, or you've decided to delay entry to middle school or entry to high school. They're all the times that it is a good idea to repeat. When it's not a good idea to repeat is when your child is going to feel left behind and like they are never, ever going to catch up, and that just reinforces what they already thought about themselves, and that is they really are struggling, and perhaps they really are as dumb and stupid as they thought they were. So just be careful, because there's a lot of actually research done now about changing schools and repeating years and how important it is. So today I've attached a survey because I think this topic is a really, really important one. In fact, it's so important I covered a whole chapter on it in my book. But there's a survey attached to this Facebook Live, and you'll see it, I think, below when I post this. You'll see that those questions, these are the 4 questions I've asked, and all you need to do is answer yes or no. And again, we'll post the results so everybody gets to see what other parents are thinking, because remember, we are a community of like-minded people. And if we share our information, then we help others to perhaps have the courage and the conviction to advocate on behalf of their children. So question number 1 is, did you start your child at school late? Did you start your child at school late? I did on 2 occasions. Both my boys started a year later. So I would say yes for that. What would you say? Tell me what you think. That's question number 1. Question number 2, has your child repeated a year? And I would answer yes for that, because I actually had one of my sons move from one school to another and repeat grade 1. So that's the way I did it. And also I had my daughter change. When we changed states, she was more age relevant here in Australia, in Melbourne, Australia, I should say, to actually stay in grade 1, which she'd actually already done up in Queensland where we were at the time. So she did repeat, and it was the perfect thing for her. She was age relevant then, which was really important. It's actually really important when you get to the other end of school too, because when children start getting their driver's license and they become adults, all those things happen at the end of school, and it's important that your child is relevant in age to their peers at that time specifically. Do you wish your child had repeated a year? So if you haven't repeated a year with them, do you wish they had? I'd like to know the answer to that. And the 4th question we've got for you is, did you change your child's school to get them a better level of support? I did that as well. Now, I've asked this question of parents before, and they'll say to me, I didn't have an option. We only had one local primary school, so that's where my children went. Or our district was zoned, so I had to go to one specific primary school. I didn't have options. So there are my 4 questions that I'm going to get you to answer. And again, we're going to send those out on an email as well. So we'll answer them in Facebook for me. If you don't get my Facebook or see my Facebook post, you'll get the email. I would love to have you respond. And that way I can share the information again with you next week, and you can actually see what everyone else out there is doing and thinking. So I want to thank you, Kerry-Ann, for your, sorry, Jenny Lee. I'm not sure why I keep saying Kerry-Ann. I want to thank you, Jenny Lee, for asking that question, because it was such a beautifully worded question, and you were so eloquent with the way that you actually expressed it yourself. So I hope you have, I hope I gave you the answers that you're seeking, and I really hope it helped you to understand what you can do and how you can advocate on behalf of your child. And again, if you need any further help, please let me know and I'll help you further. So have a great day, everybody. And I hope you have a super rest of your day, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.